I am Eli Avivi. I am here more than 60 years. President of a very small country. It was like kind of a war between the government and me about the place. They didn't want me to have this place. They didn't like me. It starts with this. Then they didn't want me to live here. And they do everything they can do to take me away from here. Because they never understand why I came here, what I'm doing here. They didn't like it. Look, you cannot see this especially now, but when I came here, was nobody here. Many years. I am more strong now than before. They cannot say anything to me today. They didn't like me to make a little country. It's like I make something against Israel, but it's not true. I am Israeli. I have Israeli passport and everything. I mean, I love Israel, the place, not the government. I don't think I have too many years to live more. I am more than 85 years old. I hope my wife, she stay. But if I'm dead, she will decide what she wants. She loves the place.
My name is Rina Avivi. I'm the wife of Eli Avivi. Eli Avivi is president of Achziv, and he's very, very, very good president, and president for all the life. In Achziv, they don't change president. Achziv is a very old place, one of the old places in Israel. It starts from Phoenician, Roman, Greece, Byzantine, Crusaders time, and the last time it's Arabic. In 71, the government of Israel, they say Achziv is come to be national park. And if they want to make national park, they must destroy all the place, all the village. And my husband Eli, the president Eli, they don't want destroy because it's beautiful view and beautiful, the place is beautiful, and the government say no and destroy the house, and they make the fence around. And because the fence, we say to the Israeli government, we don't want to be more Israeli. They make border and destroy the place. And we ask, take the passport, and we don't want to be. People believe we make land. We make this only publicity, because we need this. We must need for people know about Eli Avivi. Because if no, and we have a lot people ask if we want to marry because it's different country. They want to be immigration here. They want to live in Achziv land. We'll see, the idea is nice. We say, why not? We make the passport, we make the stamp, and everybody thinks in Achziv, everybody smoke or take drugs. Eli and me never smoke and never drink. I don't like alcohol. And I think it's very, 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 very much what happened about the place after we'll go, like everyone. And I think it's the best. It's make together of the government, some to make contact from national park.
While most Israelis vote for a new parliament next week, there's one place in the north of Israel that will be an election-free zone. One-man rule has been the way there for more than 40 years. On Israel's coastal road, just south of Lebanon, lies a crossing into a land of another kind. Large blue iron gates with white painted signs mark the border, but there is no entry procedure. Visitors just arrive, then go and look for the president. This is Achzivland, perhaps the most unusual piece of territory in the Middle East. It has the trappings of a state, a flag, of a mermaid, a national anthem, the sound of the sea, and a constitution declaring the president democratically elected by his own vote, never actually cast. Oaxivland also has a House of Parliament, a timber structure with scatter cushions round a table, though it has no serving MPs and has never held any sessions. It also issues, and stamps, its own passport, which requests bearers be allowed to pass freely without let or hindrance wherever they may travel. Set among picturesque landscape, and with a history stretching back to the Phoenicians, Oaxivland has been governed by its oldest inhabitant, Eli Avivi, and his devoted First Lady, Rina, since the couple seceded from Israel in 1971. Next to the ailing Sultan of Oman, President Avivi is the longest-serving ruler in the region, having survived several attempts by one of the most powerful nations in the Middle East to oust him. Not surprisingly, Israel has never recognized Oaxivland. But the tiny state has stood its ground, with a gutsiness well beyond its size. Now 85, Eli is frail, hard of hearing and slow, but with wispy white hair, trademark kaftan and a shepherd's staff he cuts a figure befitting his legendary reputation. Resting outside his palace, a small wooden cabin, fanned by the cool sea breeze, Eli looks out across the land where he has lived and fought since the early 1950s. "I am the president of a very small country," he says, his voice raspy and weak, "but I have a lot of problems with the Israeli government. They didn't want me to live here and did everything they could to take me away from here. It was like a kind of war between the government and me." Born in Persia, he arrived age 2 in what was then British Mandate Palestine, brought by his father on a voyage which began his lifelong love of the sea. As a youngster he was caught and let go numerous times as he carried out acts of sabotage against British troops. Then at the age of 15 he joined the Pallium, the underground Jewish navy, and helped smuggle Jewish refugees into the country, before fighting the British, then Arab forces during Israel's 1948-49 War of Independence. After the establishment of the Israeli state, he returned to sea as a fisherman, working on boats from Africa to Scandinavia, including spending a year as an Israeli living with Eskimos in Greenland. But then, in 1952, on a trip to visit his sister, Eli came across Oaxif. Profile: Oaxivland. Head of State: Eli Avivi, President for life. Political system: the President is democratically elected by his own vote. Size: 3.5 acres. Population: 2. Borders: self-declared, north, Oaxif Stream, south, Buckbuck Hill, east, Antioch Road, west, Mediterranean Sea. Economy: tourism, entrance fee to National Museum. Flag: mermaid on background of old Oaxif building. Anthem: Sound of the Sea. Foreign relations: friendly with all the countries in the world, with a special favor for Israel. Foreign recognition: none. Defense forces: fans from all over the world and true friends. A former Arab fishing village known in Arabic as Al-Zib, its residents fled, resettling in nearby Acre or Lebanon, when it was conquered by the Jewish army in 1948. Eli found the abandoned village derelict, and, after his years of wandering, decided to stay. He caught fish, which he sold to the local kibbutz, and built himself a house. Oaxif was an oasis of tranquility and started to attract young people who would come and hang out with Eli. As well as fishing and hunting for antiquities, Eli took up photography, developing a penchant for girls posing semi-naked or nude, a pastime which would see him amass more than 1 million photos, which are now stored in a warehouse in Oaxivland. It was an idyllic existence. But before long the Israeli army said it wanted the land for a military base, and Eli's troubles with the authorities began. He had a lease on just 2 buildings, so he wrote to Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, who replied expressing his support, much to the military's chagrin. According to Rina, the army agreed to let him stay on condition he worked as an undercover agent for the Shin Bet, Israel's domestic intelligence agency, which, she says, he did. Eli had won the first round, but bigger battles lay ahead. To make ends meet, Eli started to let out lodgings, and with its free and easy ethos, Oaksif became a haven for hippies, an Israeli Tashbury, where young people would roam, shed their clothes, play music, smoke drugs and party. People came to see the sea, to take in the sun without bathing suits, most of them smoking grass. It was a place where you came to feel free. This was the idea, says Shlomo Abramovich, a former investigative journalist in the area. Eli Avivi was a kind of unique personality. He was very friendly and a bit of a legend among Israelis. Oaksif was also a magnet for celebrities, among them Hollywood A-listers. Paul Newman hung out there while filming Exodus in 1966, and Sophia Loren was a frequent visitor. When she saw the place, she absolutely loved it, recalls Rena. I was a teenager and she was one of my idols, and she taught me how to cook spaghetti here. Meanwhile, as the Israeli state established itself and building programs expanded, the government declared its intention to turn Oaksif into a national park. One day in 1963 it sent in bulldozers to demolish the remains of the old village, including the land around Eli's home, intending to replace it with turf. To Eli, this was a wanton act of historical and environmental vandalism. As an enraged Eli Avivi stood on a wall to take photographs of the destruction, a bulldozer knocked it down, leaving him nursing several broken bones, he says. The final straw came in the summer of 1971 when officials erected a fence around Eli's diminished land, cutting off his access to the beach. In a defining moment in the birth of their nation, Eli and Rena ripped up their Israeli passports and declared Oaksif independent, only to be arrested and taken to court. According to Rena, the judge threw out a charge of creating a country without permission but fined the couple 1 lira for destroying their passports, and ordered their release. The case of the breakaway hippie state started to attract the attention of the media, and this presented Eli with an opportunity. In his new capacity as president, he called a press conference and led dozens of peaceniks in a sit-in. This national park may be fitting for Tel Aviv but not Tel Oaksif, President Avivi told TV crews. The regional council had issued a demolition order to destroy the parliament building, he said. Then he promptly appointed all the protesters Oaksif MPs, and instructed them to go and start a campaign. We did it for publicity, because the government was stronger than us, recalls Rena. The media started to write a lot about it, and people started to believe it, and so long as they did there was more chance the government would leave us alone. In fact, this wasn't the first time Eli and Rena had made the headlines. Only months earlier they had been at the center of a cross-border kidnap attempt. On the night of the 1st of January 1971, 6 Palestinian gunmen came by boat from Lebanon just 3 miles, 5 kilometers, away, and landed on the beach at Oaksif. According to Rena, the crew fooled the Coast Guard into letting them past, saying they were fishermen going to see Eli Avivi. One of the gunmen entered the house but Rena stopped him at gunpoint, and he dropped his weapon and a bag containing grenades. He was expecting to find Eli and got a shock when he saw a beautiful, blonde woman with a gun instead, she says. Within minutes the army arrived and sealed off all the roads for miles around. 2 more gunmen were caught at the boat, while the other 3 were captured inland. People saw 1,000 troops heading here, but because the army imposed a media blackout they did not know why, and rumors started to spread that Israel had gone to war with Oaksivland. Laughs Rena. The infiltrators, who belonged to Fatah, had planned to kidnap Eli, she says, and take him to Lebanon. When the blackout was lifted, one tabloid newspaper reported the incident under the headline, "Terrorists wanted to kidnap Israel's #1 nude photographer." The incident enhanced Eli Avivi's reputation and added to a life story where fact and fiction were fast becoming difficult to separate. Israelis flocked from far and wide to experience Oaksivland, much to the annoyance of the authorities, who were fed up with its defiant hippie king. In a sign of the breakaway country's popularity, when Oaksivland decided in 1972 to put on a rock festival, like Woodstock, says Rena, there were traffic jams for 60 miles, 94 kilometers, around. All of Israel came to this festival. We lost control. Everyone burst in, like a herd, recalled Mia Kotler, the festival's producer, in the 2009 documentary Oaksif, A Place for Love. In the meantime, Eli Avivi continued to build his state, getting guests to help with chores. Oaksivland was the only country in the world which puts its hippie residents to productive and useful work. He has been quoted as saying. Eli also established an impressive national museum in the former house of the Arab village chief, displaying thousands of artifacts he had found on dives and digs, from ossuaries, a container for human bones, to pieces of jewelry to rusting nautical instruments. By law, many of the items belong to the Israel Antiquities Authority, which considers them on loan even though it does not officially recognize the museum. The Archaeological Office is the only office of government we don't have a problem with, says Rina. During the years that followed, a protracted legal battle took place between Eli, the Regional Council, the Land Administration and the Nature and Parks Authority, but the authorities gradually got their way. Most of Oaksif became absorbed into the national park and Eli was prohibited from holding festivals in Oaksivland. He insists through that he has been misunderstood and that he was never anti-Israel. I love Israel the place, but not the government, because they never understood why I came here, he says. They didn't like me making a little country. They think it's something done against Israel, but this is not true. In fact, according to one report, in a demonstration of patriotism in 1978, when Israel launched a major offensive against Palestinian militants in southern Lebanon, President Avivi announced he had opened my airspace for Israeli planes to overfly Oaksivland on their way to Fatahland. These days, he says, the authorities mainly leave him alone. I'm stronger now than before. There's nothing they can do or say to me, he says. After years of confrontation, the two sides have reached an accommodation.